Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dadsigner podcast. Today, I am joined by Brad Hansen. Hey, Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Why don't you tell folks a little bit about where you're located, what you do, and a bit about your family?
Yeah, so I am from St. Louis, in a suburb of St. Louis. I live in Lake St. Louis, Missouri. Currently, I'm a creative director at Lindenwood University, which is a private institution, and I lead a small team there producing integrated marketing campaigns and basically anything you can think of from like out of home to digital ads to paid social, like that sort of stuff. And also, I do a lot of freelance illustration. That's one of the reasons I love working at Lindenwood too, and being in house too, is I have good work life balance. I have a really good knit group of people, a good culture. I found like a sweet spot. I kind of like, and then I get to interact with students too. So it's been really good. And then I have two daughters, Lee and Haley. Brinley is 5 and Haley is 3. I love them to death. My two little princesses. They're learning how to prank me, which is something I didn't expect. Like my daughter took my workout bag and replaced it with her little book bag. And she said, "Hey, Daddy, did you bring my backpack to the gym?" I'm like, "No, it's a good try, though." But she thought I was actually going to bring her tiny little pink backpack to the gym. So we're kind of at that age, and I didn't expect to be a girl dad, but like I wouldn't really have it any other way either.
Yeah, as a fellow girl dad, I was surprised by the amount that they wanted to wrestle.
Mm,
I just assumed, because I grew up with a brother, so it was just the two of us, and we love to wrestle, but I just thought like, oh, boys like to wrestle, but the girls, they to this day still, let's have a wrestle fight.
yeah, they call them cannonballs. I don't know if this is something you do, but they
No,
like to, it can be anything. It can be furniture, it can be our bed, but they're jumping from something to me. They have like special names for them and stuff. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, they like to be thrown around. Usually after the cannonball, they ask me to throw them back onto the couch.
hmm
Yeah, they're a little aggressive and not expected because I'm one of 4 boys and 2 girls. So I grew up in a huge family. I only knew that boys, just like my older brothers, like to just really hurt me, you know?
yeah,
I still flinch when I like walk by them sometimes, but I'm a lot bigger than them now.
you could hurt them.
Yeah. Yeah, I could hurt
Did
them.
did your daughter replace like did she take your workout gear out of your bag and put it in her bag, or did she
No,
just
that'd be
swap the bags?
No, she just swapped the bag,
Okay,
and then she hid my bag around the
okay,
corner and actually in the closet, just like right behind me. And
got
it's
it.
a prank. And we were on our way home from church, and she wanted us to tell us all her prank, like all of our prank stories, because she thinks it's funny. And so when she got home, she started to like move things. I told her it's not funny when she takes my keys and my wallet, which has happened. Um, I said, that's not what we're going to do. You can do other things, but not like essentials that I need to get to work and, buy gas and stuff and pay my bills and everything.
Yeah, and then as far as you mentioned full-time job at the university, but doing some freelance illustration. I've seen online a lot of e-ink work. Is that your
Yeah.
primary outlet, or it's just kind of something you've been into lately?
So that's actually a really interesting story. A company named Supernote, I reached out to them and asked them like, hey, I'm looking for something. I do Inktober on Instagram most years. Um, and I was just looking for a different like method to do it, something like to push me out of like my comfort zone of just pen and pencil or my iPad or whatever. And I had never heard of these little e-ink devices. There's a bunch of companies that make them, and they offered to send me one. They didn't say I had to do like my whole Inktober on it. They just saw my art and thought it'd be a cool like collaboration. And, you know, that turned into me sort of becoming obsessed with these little tablets that are mostly monochromatic, besides a couple that I've had every single one, by the way. I'm like the e-ink guy. Like most Instagram messages I get nowadays are about these tablets, which is really funny. But yeah, I've become sort of like a brand affiliate for some of these companies in terms of like them being clients. You know, there's a company called V Woods that use some of my art and some of their like paid ads and stuff, but I gave them the rights to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Hey, I drew this. You guys sent me a free device. Like, take this." And they used it in like their Christmas ads. But like, are they clients? No, not really. I wouldn't, have I sold some devices for them? Yeah. I also like that they're like super minimal and like the tools are very simple. When you get to the iPad, I think it can be like there's a million Procreate brushes out there. It can be hard to know where to start. That's kind of like why e-ink has been something that's been sort of incorporated into my process, even with some client work that I've done. I did a Target gift card. I just finished up some postcards for St. Luke's. I did like some art for them.
Not e-ink, just in general, you did some illustration.
Yeah. So what I do is part of my process, and I think the people who do follow me like to see like my process and how I do things, because I never start on the iPad. In fact, I usually always say like I'm kind of scared to death of a digital white screen, um, because I'm just not comfortable there. I always scan in my sketches or email them to myself or use whatever tool the the device has, and I usually like draw over it. Yeah, so not not clients, but I create quite a bit of like freelance illustration every year. But I've also sort of learned the hard way. I just kind of do one client at a time. Um, I've slowed my roll, I guess you could say.
So you mentioned e-ink is often monochromatic, but I've seen a lot of orange and purple
Mm-hmm.
on your feed. Is that a different device, or are you colorizing it after the fact?
Yeah, that's just like a gradient map. So I take
Okay.
5 colors and I just like I'll take the monochromatic sketch. Since it's in grayscale, it grabs those values, right? And it pairs them up with similar values in the gradient map, right? So it going from dark to light. And those are like my brand colors.
Yeah, yeah.
I people ask me why I always draw in them. It's because I want to. It's not because it's the only colors I it's this I don't know, it's this weird thing I've been sort of exploring in terms of trying to find that instant recognition for artwork that I do using the same color palette over and over. And it's not the only colors I draw in. I'm way better at posting my illustration work. I don't post a ton of design work, but I might make my living off of doing design. So, and some illustration.
It's interesting. I've talked to a few guests now where design is kind of the core of who they are and what they do the majority of, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not always what they're most vocal about online or what most people know them for.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been interesting to have these conversations around like, oh, I thought you were like the e-ink guy. And you're like, actually, 90% of my day is made, making social graphics or leading a team that makes social graphics, which is like
Yeah.
just a totally different thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of artists that have similar stories to mine where I'm posting personal work that I like to do and I eventually get hired to do it. Um, it's not, I don't think that's like a hidden secret, but it's true. I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to me because they liked something I did for fun. And I won't stop doing those projects because I don't get that sort of artistic fulfillment from my job sometimes. Uh, I always have an itch to create something new that I don't draw every day at Lindenwood. I mostly design. I'm like setting type, or like I'm building campaigns, or I'm working with a videographer and photographer and designers and students, marketing interns, and like teaching them the fundamentals of design. You could say there's a huge overlap there between illustration and design, in terms of things that are important, like composition and hierarchy, and like they all kind of go together in contrast and balance. And there's all these things that a professional designer should know. And I'm always kind of looking for that overlap. That's where I started, was doing illustration series, like trying to create cohesive illustration series that all come together at the end. And you look at them together and like, oh, this is like a brand identity. So I'm always looking for that overlap of what I do professionally. And I wouldn't say I'm a hobby illustrator anymore because I've put so much time into it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that really sort of satisfies that creative part of me, is to get to draw, and makes me feel a little bit like a kid
Yeah.
again.
You mentioned earlier that you like the balance between your full time job at the university and then being able to, scratch this artistic itch of illustration,
Right.
which I'm assuming part of that balance is like your ability to be there for your family as well and spend time with your girls.
Yeah.
Would you ever consider or desire to do the illustration work full time or not really?
I don't know. It's tough. I actually just went to an AIGA event in Hays, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And after coming back from that, and really also dealing with the higher, like students in higher education all the time, after doing that and seeing like how interested they were in the topics I was discussing, because is more about teaching them some of the like mistakes I've made in my career and stuff. I've almost thought about like maybe going back into teaching, because I love that too. But would I pick illustration as a full-time job? I don't know. I don't think so. But I see design as sort of my organized side, where I'm following like some rules, and then the illustration is sort of the outlet where I can make mistakes. They're kind of polar opposites to me, but I'm always trying to connect them. Just like the colors you were talking about earlier, it's usually I have a designer mindset going into the illustration, not a illustration mindset going into the illustration. It's more like, how can I make this cohesive to what I've done previously?
Mm-hmm.
And creating sort of a illustration identity, which is interesting, because not, as you know, not all designers are illustrators. I mean, people assume I draw all day at my work or at my job. Like, that couldn't be further from the truth. I know a lot of really awesome designers who don't draw.
There was a guest I was talking to about this. He does have an illustration skill and utilizes it quite frequently and is often hired for it. But I was kind of yelling at him. I'm like, you're the reason that clients think that all designers can do this. And I was like, not all of us can code, not all of us can illustrate, not all of us can do these things that are becoming more and more blurred.
Yeah, expected. I have strong opinions about that too. In fact, I think a lot of designers too, because no one has time to learn all those things. In fact, something I typically tell the students that come through my department at work is like, I usually say like, you pick two crafts and try to like master them, or try to hone in on them. And there are people that can do a lot more. We have tools now that can kind of make you, dabble in all of them, to truly know a lot about those two fields is pretty intense. I think most designers would agree with something along those lines. In fact, I see it all the time, like people talking about it. And then I also see people trying to be like, no, you should know all these things. I'm like, maybe they're not a dad.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like any of that learning and experience that you have influences the way that you raise your girls? Maybe not directly, like obviously they're not graphic designers, but does understanding that level of nuance between design and illustration and UI, and the learnings, does it directly or indirectly influence the way that you think about how your girls learn and the things that they're interested in, things that they do?
Yeah, they they come down to my office. I'm in and watch me work, and they're curious. Brinley, my oldest, she loves drawing because I love drawing. I used to post reels of us drawing together, where I'd take a time lapse of us both creating something. It was really fun. It was a fun time. I think she, you look at your parent. I look to my dad. I love baseball. I love a lot of things that he loves. Same with my mom. Like, you kind of inherit things from your parents a little bit. But I think instilling some sort of creativity into them is important to me, because they're highly creative at that age. I'm usually like surprised. But there's the other side of this where it's like, oh, they see daddy in his office all the time. Like, why is he always in his office? Even sometimes on weekends, like working on client stuff. And it's like, finding that balance is not something you talk about mastering something. Like, I'd say trying to figure out how to be a dad is probably a little bit more difficult, um, because I've learned the hard way many times. I haven't done the best job either. I've There's been weeks I've worked way too much, and I was on a client project and I had to hit a deadline. It's like, sorry, but like Saturday I have to. That's why when I talked about earlier about doing one project at a time is sort of I learned that I have to do that, or else I'm sacrificing like precious time that I won't get back. But I think the dream now is somehow being present with them a little bit more every day, like getting better at that, and just like teaching them good values and teaching them how to be kind is really important to me too. Um, but there is that mastering being a dad too, because you're not taught uh, ever.
Fatherhood, I compare it a little bit to leading a team for the first time. You can go through manager training, but it doesn't prepare you for the actual scenarios. Like, the only way to get reps at being a manager is to be a manager and experience the unknown of what people will bring to the table. And I feel like being a dad is very similar to that. Do you notice
Yeah,
parallels?
yeah, yeah. You're. Uh, it's funny. I was actually promoted to the position I'm in during a really like tough season. I was like in the middle of a depression. Ironically enough, it's funny that you get this dream job or this title during, and it's funny when my boss called me and promoted me, I didn't really care. I was so burnt out from doing client work and chasing those things, and then dealing with being a manager, and like being a good leader is so different than being a boss. To truly care about people that report to you and like want the best for them isn't something that comes naturally. You know, Sometimes you look out for yourself, or you're trying to, provide some comfort level for yourself. But what I'd say is like the work for both of them is really well worth it. Like, investing time into um, the people I work with or who report to me is so valuable. You get so much out of it. You get a team like who is more inspired, more willing to go the extra mile. When I like my youngest Haley, uh, you can tell, like when I spend time with her and I devote time with her and I like get on her level and I'm like talking to her and trying to play with her and like she gets it. She wants that. She wants her dad's attention. Um, and it hasn't always been there. And uh, I know that I need to spend quality time with them too. I can tell a big difference in terms of uh, how, how they are with me when I go out of my way to spend personal time with each of them. It makes a big difference in both uh, being a leader and being a dad.
You mentioned too going through a bout of depression at a very interesting time, shifting roles, so more
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. Plus, your parenting responsibilities never go away. So
Right.
what was that like? How did you go through that time? Where are you at now?
Yeah. It's hard to explain. Like when I heard the word depression or I heard the word, I've always been an anxious person, right? But when you look back, you can see, seasons you go through, and I think there's a reason for each of them. Uh, but yeah, that was probably one of the more dark times in my life for sure. Actually, probably the darkest was a year of depression from about 2022 to 2023. Like sort of after COVID had already done its thing, but this was like the aftermath, like the aftershock of the earthquake. I was working remote most of the time. I uh, I wasn't working out. I wasn't getting out of the house much. Uh, in fact, I wasn't. And then I also was sort of I was chasing uh, I was chasing this freelance that was getting big clients. I was getting high paying like freelance work. It kind of got to my head a little bit, I think, if I'm honest. Like it made me feel like, oh, I did a Target gift card. Like, look at me. I would have thrown all of that away to not go through what I went through. You know what I mean? But yeah, that season was really tough on me and my family because my daughters had to watch me go through something they know when something's not right. Um, yeah, probably the toughest moment was uh, I actually had to be taken to like a treatment center and like I had to go to like a rehab facility for a week because I just wasn't thinking right. It got really bad. I like hit rock bottom. And my daughter, she saw me leave and I didn't come home for a week, right? Uh, and she still sometimes asks like, Daddy, when are you going to be home? Like, when are you going to come home? And it's a tough thing for a kid to get to experience, but what's really cool is she got to see her dad overcome something that seemed impossible. She doesn't like it when I leave the house. She wants her daddy home. It's just like that's how important you're like being a father is to your kids. They want you to be there and be present. But yeah, that season was tough because yeah, I had my dreams come true uh, and got this title I wanted and got these accolades or got these freelance clients, and it's like who cares? I just got humbled big time. I think just the severe lack of community and like being with people. Like I feel like we were made to be together. I'm a Christian. I believe um, like we were created to be with others. Um, Not just your family, but like people who are like minded, people who are there to build you up, even like people who will like pray for you. And so I found a group at my church um, called Celebrate Recovery, but it's just a group of guys will, who just kind of went through a rough season with me and sort of helped pull me out of it. My boss at the time probably wouldn't have ever known unless I told him. And he walked through it with me too. And it was my first time, we talked about being a boss earlier. It's my first time where I had a boss who had been through something and was empathetic enough to open up to me about it, which made me feel like I wasn't crazy, right? But also, he let me take time off that I needed. And he knew it because he had been through something too. And it's those people in your life and finding community that um, can save you, can bring some hope to your life. Doing those tough things. I didn't want to do any of it. I knew I had to, like, to save my life. I knew I had to step out of this comfort zone that I had. And like what it's turned into is insane. I look for it in all aspects of my life now, not just at church or in the community I have or my family, but I look for it in like the design world. Like so many cool stories have come from such a dark season. Uh, in fact, I've been known for saying like I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the tough stuff because um, it made me who I am right now. Like thankful for each day. Thankful to have daughters. Like truly thankful to have girls who are looking up to me. When I was afraid of that before, I was being a dad isn't easy. I didn't. Sometimes you don't want the responsibility of being a father. Um, I don't think I wanted it. Like I wanted children, but I didn't want that. I didn't want to take that next step of where I'm emotionally involved with my daughters. And some of the coolest things have come from that season.
Yeah, I appreciate you opening up about that because one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast was, yes, to meet other dads who are designers. There's a huge community aspect to it,
Yeah.
but also getting to the realness of we're so good at presenting our portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
and but there's this whole other side that we often don't have an opportunity to discuss. And so,
Right.
um, yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Um, I want to ask you two more questions, and then we'll kind of wrap up here.
Mm-hmm.
You've woven in and out of them, so the answers might be similar, or you might be like, "Oh, I answered that back there." As a dad, what do you think has been your greatest parenting success? And then what has been your greatest parenting either failure or learning?
Yeah, success. I think sort of what I said early in terms of trying to lead with action, not with some of my words. A lot of what I would tell them in the past was, didn't come from the heart. Like me and my wife, we think about our daughters and their future, and like we want to pray for them and we want for them to come to know like Jesus, or we want them to become, we want them to understand uh, that you can overcome hard times. We want to be vocal about that in their lives, and so that they're comfortable coming to us in those tough seasons. I just want to be a good example for them. I want them to see something in me that's special. I want them to see something in me that's different. I want them to experience a love for me that I think can't really be found anywhere else, at least at their age. I have the privilege to lead them and guide them in a way that uh, no one else can, being their father. Um, and that's a privilege to me now. It used to be a burden. I didn't really understand love until I became a dad, because you can't really put a price or anything on it. You can't understand that love until you realize how much you love your daughters. And then I compare it to how much I think God loves us, and I think he loves us so much more than we could even love our kids. It's just sort of a humbling thing. But success to me would be for them to, you know, come to know Jesus. I'll never force them to do anything. I want them to make up their own mind, but I can pray for them, and I can pray for their future, and I can pray for them to have decent lives, and I can protect them. So That's sort of like success, I think, for me would be my greatest success if it comes true. Um, Failure, I think failure is tougher to talk about. Um, just not being there, not being emotionally connected to them, not giving them what I think they actually need from me as their dad. That's a tough thing to talk about because, you know, before I went through that season of depression, I was selfish. To be a parent, you have to be selfless. Like you have to put their needs before yours. And that's still something I struggle with today. Dads are they're so important to a kid's life. I don't think they can be replaced um, by something else. And I'm fortunate enough to have a dad and be one. Not everyone is that fortunate. You know, for that I'm thankful.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate those reminders too. Thanks so much for coming on, for sharing, for
Yeah.
being so open. If folks want to either find you online or you sparked something in them where they want to have a conversation with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on Instagram. It's just B Hansen Design. And Hansen is spelled with an E, not an O. That's often missed. Um, and then I have a portfolio website I never update. But yeah, or emailing me, bradleyjhansen@gmail.com. Um, I love to talk about design. I love to talk about illustration, e-ink tablets, you know, all the cool stuff going on in that world, whatever's next. And, you know, I always tell people don't ever hesitate to reach out to somebody. It's hard, but now I've messaged some of the best designers in the world and they're more than willing to chat with you. They're humans. I won't say I'm one of the like most talented ones, but I'll talk to you.
Well, I think you're pretty talented, and I'm
Thank you.
really grateful that we had this chance to connect and have this conversation.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing too. I think this is a really cool uh, thing for dads and designers, and not just that, but other anyone to listen to who's in the field or even not.